Before I start talking to you about the guitar that I'm holding right here, I wanted to bring attention to this book. This is a book called the Gibson ES-175 or ES-175, Its History and Players, and it's by a British jazz guitar historian by the name of Adrian Ingram. The reason I wanted to talk about the ES-175 is that it was quite a groundbreaking instrument for Gibson. It was introduced in 1949 and it was made as a working person's guitar, so it was built down to a price without sacrificing quality. What the people at Gibson figured was that there was no need really in a guitar whose primary purpose was as an electric amplified guitar to have elaborate solid woods. So they started to make the ES-175 from laminated plywoods. Also, a lot of the gold plating and things that you found on the more expensive guitars like the L5 and Super 400, they were forsaken in favor of nickel plating, which kept the price down, as did a lack of elaborate binding. That's this white material that you see around the edges of the guitars. It's quite expensive and time-consuming to add that, so it's not really a functional part of the instrument. So they left that out and left a core instrument which, although it was considered at the time a budget guitar, went on to be perhaps the most famous jazz guitar of all time. It's been played by people like Joe Pass, Herb Ellis, Pat Metheny, Jim Hall, and I think the question with regard to the ES-175 is not who has played that guitar in jazz, but who hasn't. Anyway, moving on, I wanted to talk to you about this specific guitar here. The reason I talked about the two within the same time frame is that this guitar, the L-4CES, is very similar visually to the ES-175, but it does have some important differences. How do you tell one from another? Well, the most obvious clue is the positioning of the neck pickup here. As you can see on the L-4CES, it's right up against the end of the fretboard. Now, I have another guitar here which I've brought along to show you. This is a Washburn J10, again modelled very similarly on the ES-175, but it has its neck pickup in exactly the same place as an ES-175, so that's about 3/4 of an inch down from the end of the fretboard. Does this make a lot of difference in terms of the sound of the instrument? Well, that's kind of hard to say. Some would argue that because the neck pickup on this guitar is closer to the fretboard, it'll give a slightly warmer sound, but I don't know if that distance is enough to make a difference. However, the instrument does sound great. One of the factors behind that great sound might be the fact that this guitar is constructed in a fundamentally different way. If you recall, I mentioned that the ES-175 was a laminated wood guitar. While this shares the same outline, same general shape, same racy Florentine cutaway or sharp cutaway, same kind of double parallelogram inlays along the fretboard here, the actual construction is different. The top on this guitar is made of solid carved spruce, and the back of the instrument, which is probably my favorite part, is actually made entirely of solid hand-carved mahogany, which is a beautiful deep red wood which lends guitars a softer tone and a kind of warm sheen. Just to illustrate that for you, I'm going to play a couple of chords on the instrument and let you hear it. If you play single notes on this guitar, they've got a really warm kind of a plummy sound, which I think is coming from this mahogany body here. So there you go. It's a really sweet sound. That's the Gibson L-4CES. If you get a chance to try one of these instruments, please do. I mean, most people will go for an ES-175 if they're new to jazz, but this is a viable alternative. They are kind of expensive, brand new, but because the model name is not as well known as the ES-175, they can be found for very reasonable prices on the used market. So do give one a try. It comes highly recommended from me.